I'm going to teach you how to comp an apartment building in this video. If you want to start investing or wholesaling in multifamily real estate, you need to know the numbers. You need to know how to calculate the cash on cash return. You need to know how to calculate the cap rate. You need to know about the rent rolls. You need to know about the operating expenses. You need to know about all this stuff. And I'm going to show you how to do it right now. I'm going to teach you some back of the napkin tricks so you can do this literally in like 30 seconds. And you can also do it a lot better if you spend the time and you can get some really good numbers on paper so you can start sending out LOIs, getting deals under contract, and wholesaling for big assignment fees or buying your own apartment. But it all starts here on the property, right? We have to find a property. So I pulled up this random apartment building in Mexia, Texas. So Mexia means middle of nowhere. I think it's an abbreviation for middle of nowhere because I've never heard of Mexia. And they say their cap rate is 7.38%. So what does that even mean? Having a cap rate of 7.38%. Is that good? Is that bad? Well, it depends. I hate to say that, but it depends. California is going to have a much lower cap rate than Texas. And New York's going to have a much lower cap rate than Texas. But places like, I don't know, like Iowa are going to have a higher cap rate than Texas. And middle of the nowhere Mexia is going to have a higher cap rate than downtown Dallas. Location means a good location means that your cap rate is lower because the property is going to appreciate more. It's just more valuable, right? You get better returns in the country in the middle of nowhere than you do in the nice town. It's just that's just how real estate works. So you need to know your area. But 7.38% cap rate's pretty good. But this number is probably a lie. All of these numbers are probably lies because realtors and sellers are going to tell you that their cap rate is higher, and investors are going to look at these and be like, "That's not the real numbers." They're going to come in really conservative. So it's you need to find the real numbers. And what is a cap rate? Well, a cap rate is the net operating income, a fancy word for saying profit. Your net profit, you multiply that by 12, so you annualize it, and then you divide it by the purchase price. It's just saying, like, how much money are you going to make from this property? So 7.38% is not bad. Right now, US Treasuries, right? US Treasury bonds, you can go to your savings account, you can get like 5%. So 7.38% is not bad. It's not amazing. It's not bad, but you also get appreciation, right? And you get depreciation. So there's more benefits to real estate than just this number. But this just gives you a guide. So we're going to work on calculating the cap rate here. And let's check this out first. Okay, the property may need, it's actually not a bad property. It looks pretty nice. So it's 8 units. Nice. And we are going to look at the rent roll. So what's a rent roll? Well, you open up the rent rolls and these just tell you the rents, right? So when you're calling these properties, you want to ask for a few things. You want to ask for the rent rolls. This is really important. But the one thing rent rolls don't have is expenses, right? So I have the revenue, but I don't have the expenses. And without the expenses, I can't get the profit. And without the profit, I don't know if any of these numbers are real, right? So we need rent rolls, but we also need something that people call like T12s or like just the income statements. We need the expenses. So when you're calling these properties, make sure you get all of them, not just the rent rolls. Make sure you also get like expenses and stuff. But anyways, so let's quickly look at these. So if these are rent rolls, we see right here that they're getting 100% occupied. They're getting $6,400. Now that looks to be current rent. There's a difference between current rent and pro forma rent. Pro forma is a fancy word of saying projected. We hope to get this much, but we're not getting this much yet. I don't really like going off of pro forma. I'm more of a current rent guy. Don't BS me with these pro forma numbers. So it's 100% occupied. That's good. And we're getting about 63.25 in rent. So this is like the market rent. They say 6,400. They're getting 63.25. So they're saying, hey, we're a little bit undervalued, but not much. Go off of the actual rent, right? So 6,325. Is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? Okay, to the drawing board. Okay, here is our apartment building. A really nice apartment building. Sick. And now, so we had 63.25, was it? Now we need to annualize that times 12 equals $75,900. That is their yearly income. This is their annual income, right? Now, to calculate cap rate, do we just take this number and divide it by the purchase price? No, because this is their income, but we want to know what their profit is or their net operating income, right? We want to know what the NOI is, the profit. So how do we get that? Well, we have to subtract expenses, but we don't have those numbers. So we can use some just back of the napkin numbers that real estate investors use. So the first thing we can do is we can use the 50% rule. Have you heard of this rule before? It's awesome. Pretty much it's just saying that your operating expenses, your cost to operate this multifamily, this RV park, this whatever the heck it is, it's for commercial buildings. Usually you can use it for residential, but this is usually for commercial. The cost to operate this is 50% of the rent. It's just an easy number you can run in the back of your head. So if we think that the expenses are going to be 50% of this, well, we could do some big brain math. Let's see if I can do this math in my head right now. That would be 37,950, which would leave your net operating income equal to, well, 37,950, right? So there you go. That's a super easy way that you can just calculate net operating income. But something very important to notice is that this does not include debt servicing costs. I know this is all a little bit confusing, but I'll get to this. This does not include debt servicing costs. We got to make sure to subtract this if we are doing seller financing, if we're doing subject twos, if we're doing creative things, we got to use our debt servicing costs. We're going to have the cost of the mortgage, the cost of the loan. But for this simple calculation, a lot of these people are buying these properties with cash because commercial buyers got big bucks. They got a lot of money. So what you do is you just, hey, this is the rent. You divide it by half. Now you say, okay, that's our operating income. Then you take your operating income and you multiply it by 12. But we already did that, right? Right? Because we multiplied it by 12 earlier on. So you don't need to do that. And now you're just going to divide it, right? You're going to divide it by, that's such a weird division sign. Hold on. So you're just going to divide it by the purchase price, divided by the PP, the purchase price. And what is the purchase price for this property? Well, it was $649,900. $649,900. And once you get your answer, that's going to be your cap rate. That's how you calculate cap rate. Easy. 5.83%. There is your cap rate. But wait, 5.83? I don't get it. Max. You said the cap rate was 7.38%. Why are these numbers wrong? It's because these people, the sellers and realtors, are not putting operating expenses as high as we are. We're saying that half of the rent is operating expenses. They're probably saying what, like 30, maybe 40% is. So it depends. The range in real estate, this is really important. Again, remember I told you, they're going to say a higher cap rate. You as an investor are going to think a lower cap rate because you're going to put more money for expenses. Usually you want to say 0.3 to 0.5. 0.5 is being pretty conservative. I just use 0.5 because it's easy math and it's also very conservative. So if your numbers still work at 0.5 or 50%, operating expenses, that's great, but you can use 0.3. So let's just try using 0.3 for example. So here are our numbers. So instead of 37,950, we're going to take 0.3% of this, or 30% that we're going to say is expenses, and the other 70% is going to be net operating income. I'll quickly do the math and show you what that looks like. Okay, and by doing that, you end up with an 8% cap rate. That's actually a lot closer to what they had. Remember, they had a 7.38% cap rate. So what does any of this mean? It means that when you are comping properties, all right, let me explain this. When you're comping properties, you get the rent, annualize the rent, take the rent, multiply that by 12, right? Now, you're going to assume that anywhere from like 30 to 50% of the rent is going to be spent in expenses. I just use 50% because it's easy. But if you want to be a little bit more lenient, use 30%, use 40%, something like that. But is that it? Well, no, that's it if you were buying it cash, and that's how you calculate the cap rate. But we also want to do cash on cash return. Remember my hat. So we need to subtract the debt servicing costs. So I know this is all a little bit confusing, but stick with me here. I'm going to show you an example right now. I made a small mistake, the smallest of mistakes, and now I need to re-record parts of this video and re-upload it. The things I do for y'all. If you appreciate the accuracy I bring to this channel, subscribe. I'm sorry for the re-upload. Okay, let me just quickly show you how you would comp a property for creative, not for cash. If we're trying to do seller finance or subject to, how would you do it? Well, it's super easy. So let's just take this little apartment building, okay? They want $375,000 for it. They say it's a 7.82% cap rate. We already did this before. It's super simple. All we would do is take the rental income and then we would annualize it and then we would subtract the annualized operating expenses, right? But we also need to subtract the debt servicing costs because the net operating income, when we're talking about seller finance or subject to, it has a mortgage on it, right? We're either getting a mortgage from the seller or we're either getting a mortgage that we're taking over subject to, right? It has a mortgage. So we have to subtract those mortgage costs. So they already gave us the net operating income. They say it's $30,000. They say it's $30,000 a year. And how they came up with that number is they took the annualized rental income and they subtracted the annualized operating expenses. But we talked about it. These listing agents, these sellers, they're going to inflate their numbers. They're going to decrease their operating expenses. So we shouldn't take this number as fact. But for the sake of this example, we're going to, just to make things really simple. So we have this $375,000 apartment, and they're saying the net operating income is $30,000 a year, but we want to do seller financing. So this is actually not the true net operating income because we need to subtract the debt servicing costs, the monthly cost of our seller financing. So let's say in this deal, we put $75,000 down and then we seller financed 300,000. Okay, we seller financed 300,000. What would that look like? Well, let's quickly pop over to an amortization calculator and we put a $300,000 loan for, I don't know, let's just say we negotiated 30 years at 3% interest. We got a great deal. Are we probably going to get this deal? I don't know. It takes some good negotiating, but if we could get a deal like this, that's a great deal. You could probably wholesale this deal and make a lot of money. You're talking maybe like a $50,000 assignment fee, potentially. I don't know. This is a good deal if we could negotiate it. Maybe 50,000 is a little high because the property's only 375 grand, right? So maybe more like a 20 or $30,000 assignment fee. But anyways, let's look at this. Our monthly debt servicing costs, our monthly seller financing is 1264, and then 1264 times 12, we have to annualize it, is 1,000 or 15,168. 15,168. All right, let's write that down. So we're going to subtract this number, the debt servicing costs, from their quote unquote net operating income. This is not the net operating income yet. We're about to get it. And we end up with about, we're just going to make numbers simple. We end up with about what? $15,000. Okay. So we went from 30. God, I can't write. We went from 30,000 now to 15,000 NOI. And then how do we get our cap rate? Well, we don't. We're not looking at doing cap rate. Cap rate is for cash. So when you think cap rate, you think cash. What we're trying to get is cash on cash return. Cash on cash return is what you do for subject to and seller finance deals. It's the most beautiful formula in all of creative finance. And the only difference is you're not dividing it by the purchase price, you're dividing it by your entry fee, the amount of money you put down. And is this deal, remember, we put $75,000 down. Remember, we seller finance 300 and we put $75,000 down. But your entry fee is more than just the down payment. I'm coming out with videos on how to calculate entry fee. Your entry fee could include agent commissions, closing costs, arrears. It can include, TC fees. It can include rehab. It can include all of these things. But again, for the sake of this video, and your assignment fee too is part of your entry fee. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to say $15,000 is our net operating income. And we're going to divide that by, not the purchase price, that's for cap rate. We're going to divide that by the entry fee, which we're just going to say is $75,000 for the sake of this video to make things simple. And what do we get as our cash on cash return? We get exactly 20%. Is that good? That's a great cash on cash return. If you can get a deal with 20% plus cash on cash return, you are looking incredible. You're probably not going to find that, but honestly, anything over, I would say like 10%, your double digits, is starting to look good. That's my goal, is to find deals with a 10% plus cash on cash return. And I'm talking real cash on cash return, your full entry fee, the real net operating income. And now y'all know how to calculate it. So let's quickly summarize. When you're pitching cash terms on multifamily, on whatever, you're mostly focused on cap rate. So cap rate is equal to cash. It's for boring old people, right? But in the world of creative finance, we love cash on cash return because we are creative and we always need to look at the operating expenses, but we got to subtract the debt servicing costs because we're getting debt. Sometimes we're taking over a loan, sometimes we're doing seller financing. So that's what goes into a cash on cash return. And let me just quickly explain to you how we got those. So we always take rent. It's the same for everything. We take rent, we multiply it by 12. That's our annualized rent. Now we got to subtract the expenses. What are the expenses? Well, those are so many things. Those are your holding costs, your operating expenses, whatever you want to call them. There are so many things that go into them. For the sake of the video, I'm not going to go through all of them, but taxes and insurance are the two biggest ones. An easy rule of thumb is you just say, hey, yo, 50% of the rent is going to be expenses. That's being very conservative. Some people run on 30, some people run 35, 40, whatever, but want to make it simple, 50%. So now you just take 50% of the rent, and that's your net operating income if you don't have debt, right? If you're paying cash, and then you're going to divide that by the purchase price, and that will give you the cap rate. Woo! But that's boring cash, right? If we want to be creative and we're caring about our seller financing deals or whatever we're doing, we're taking the rent, we're multiplying by 12. We're saying, okay, our operating expenses are whatever. Let's just say 50%. And then we also need to subtract the debt servicing costs. So use an amortization calculator. That's a long, I don't even know how to spell. It's not one M. Oh my God, I can't spell. Use an amortization calculator. You get your loan payments. So you're subtracting your loan payments. These are loan payments. And then you're dividing by the entry fee, or really the cash down, the down payment. That's it. So that's really what we learned in this video. And you're looking for a cash on cash return probably above, I don't know, 10, 12%, 15% is great, something like that. It's really going to depend. There's not one cash on cash return that's great. There's not one cap rate that's great. But if you can get double digit cash on cash return, a lot of people are going to be really, really happy with that. So that's pretty much the basics that goes into comping a multifamily deal. Like, just go get started. That's how you comp an apartment building, guys. Just keep practicing. That's it. You guys are going to make so much money if you stick to this. You put your head down. You keep on working. You guys are going to become a million, billion, trillionaires. Just keep it up. I'm so proud of all of you. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.